What would you do if the world you trusted crumbled all around you and survival meant leaving everyone you loved behind? Today's story is about Eugene Smith, a young man who walked through the fires of Jonestown and lived to tell the tale. But survival wasn't the end of his story, it was only the beginning. Welcome to HEATHSTORY, where we bring you profound, historic, and timeless stories that delve into the resilience of the human spirit. Twice a week, each Sunday and Wednesday, we explore the untold chapters of history, moments that shaped our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay with us for every story. Eugene Smith's introduction to the People's Temple wasn't just chance. It was destiny shaped by a turbulent time. At just 15, Eugene had organized a walkout in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., and his mother, seeing his activist spirit, suggested he attend a speech by a man named Jim Jones. Jones, with his trademark sunglasses and charismatic aura, didn't immediately captivate Eugene, but what did catch his attention was the crowd. Vibrant, determined young people with a purpose. Intrigued, Eugene found himself drawn to the People's Temple, a group preaching racial equality and social justice. By the time Eugene was 18, his family was deeply involved. His mother had even donated their home to the temple, and Eugene had moved to the temple's San Francisco hub. Life within the temple was a paradox. On the surface, it was a haven of inclusion and purpose. Members worked tirelessly for the collective good, and the temple's outreach programs earned praise. But behind closed doors, things were a lot different. Jim Jones demanded loyalty, absolute, unquestioning loyalty. Eugene's independent streak made him stand out. He was intelligent, hardworking, and committed to the temple's ideals, but he wasn't easily manipulated. They couldn't control me the way they controlled others, Eugene said. Wednesday nights at the temple included what they called catharsis sessions. Members were required to confess to fabricated or real misdeeds and endure public accusations. For Eugene, it was clear control, not spiritual growth, was the goal. To understand all of this, we have to take a closer look at Jim Jones. Not just a cult leader. He was a master manipulator, a man who could make people believe the unbelievable. From the outside, Jones was a preacher of progress, a man who championed racial integration and social justice in a time when those ideas were very controversial. He didn't just preach equality, he acted on it, adopting children of different races, integrating his congregation, and building a following of people who believed they were part of something important, something that mattered in life. But beneath the image of a charismatic leader lay something far darker. Jones understood power, and he knew how to use it. His speeches were electrifying, his presence magnetic. He spoke with an intensity that made people feel seen, understood, like they belonged. He gave hope to the hopeless, offering poor families, the elderly, and the disenfranchised people a new community where they were valued. And in return, he demanded complete, unwavering loyalty. The People's Temple started as a church but became something else entirely. Members were encouraged to cut off ties with family and friends who doubted Jones. They were asked to sign over their paychecks, their homes, their entire lives to the temple. Doubting Jones wasn't just disloyal, it was dangerous. When members questioned his decisions, he would turn the congregation against them, humiliating them in front of everyone. Some were beaten. Others were forced to endure sleep deprivation or extreme emotional manipulation. He planted spies among his own followers, ensuring that fear and paranoia kept them from rebelling. Jones' control grew stronger when he began performing miracles. In his sermons, he would call out people in the crowd, telling them their most personal secrets, things no one should have known. He staged fake healings, making it appear as though he could cure cancer or restore the ability to walk. His followers believed they were in the presence of a prophet, a man sent by God. They had given up everything for him, and that made them willing to follow him anywhere. And then in 1974, he announced that the temple was leaving the United States. America, he said, was corrupt, evil, filled with racism and violence. The only way to be free was to leave it behind. That's how Jonestown was born, not as a prison, but as a promise. A new land, free from oppression, where his followers could build a socialist utopia, where they could be safe. Thousands believed him, And so they left. At first, Jonestown, deep in the South American jungle of Guyana, seemed like a dream realized, but the cracks appeared quickly. Jones' control tightened, his paranoia deepened, and the same people who had followed him into the jungle began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. In 1977, Eugene's wife, Ollie, who was pregnant, was sent to Jonestown. Jones had begun encouraging families to move there, calling it a revolutionary paradise where they could build a better future away from America's corruption. Many believed him, seeing Jonestown as the next step in their commitment to the temple. Ollie was among them. Eugene joined her months later, just days before his son was born, assigned to work in the settlement and contribute to its growth. At first, he tried to convince himself this was a fresh start, a chance to be part of something purposeful. But the longer he stayed, as each day went by, the closer he looked at what was really going on, the more cracks he saw. Jonestown was isolated, its dense jungle surroundings creating a physical and psychological prison. The conditions were grueling: overcrowded barracks, endless meals of rice, and unrelenting mental pressure. Jim Jones, increasingly paranoid and strung out on drugs, controlled every aspect of life. White night rehearsals, drills for mass suicide, kept everyone on edge. These were not simple exercises, they were terrifying tests of loyalty. Jones would wake the community in the dead of night, summoning them to the pavilion under the glow of floodlights. He would tell them the time had come, that enemies were closing in, and that their only escape was through death. Large vats of liquid would be distributed, and Jones would order everyone to drink, telling them it contained poison. Some hesitated, others obeyed without question. They would take the cups, swallow, and wait, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours, until Jones finally revealed that it had only been a test. "Tonight you have proven your loyalty," he would say. Eugene worked on the wood crew, one of the few tasks that allowed him to leave the compound. This brief reprieve from Jones' incessant broadcast gave him a sliver of mental clarity, but it wasn't enough to escape the growing darkness. He noticed how promises of freedom and equality had been replaced by fear, punishment, and submission. People who once saw Jones as a savior now whispered about escape, though none dared act on it. Jonestown was suffocating. Every morning, loudspeakers blared Jones's sermons across the compound, his voice omnipresent. Work hours were grueling, and illness ran rampant due to malnutrition. Spies were everywhere, and a single complaint could lead to public shaming or worse. The fear of punishment was constant. Some nights, Jones would keep the entire settlement awake, warning them that enemies were near. "The CIA is coming," he would say. "They want to destroy us." Panic spread like wildfire. Jones' erratic behavior became more extreme, his sermons turning into rants about enemies both real and imagined. He would stagger onto the pavilion, slurring his words, speaking of conspiracies and persecution. Eugene was trapped, and he knew it. He and Ollie spoke in hushed voices about their fears, careful never to be overheard. They had come seeking a future. Instead, with their newborn son, they had found a nightmare. In August 1978, Eugene was summoned by one of the temple's counselors. Jones wanted Eugene to go to Georgetown, Guyana's capital, to replace a staff member there. At first, Eugene resisted. His wife and son were constantly his concern, and he didn't want to leave them behind. But Jones's orders weren't requests. "Father wants you to go," the counselor insisted. Eugene negotiated one condition: daily shortwave radio communication with Ollie. Reluctantly, he left, unaware that this errand would save his life. In Georgetown, Eugene was cut off from Jonestown's oppressive environment, though his daily calls with Ollie were a lifeline. On November 17, 1978, he spoke to her. In a whispered tone, she assured him that everything was fine. The next day, Congressman Leo Ryan arrived in Jonestown with journalists and some concerned family members. Initially, Jones staged a harmonious scene for Ryan and his delegation. Performances, speeches, and smiling faces masked the underlying fear. But cracks began to show when residents slipped notes to Ryan, pleading for help to escape. Ryan's planes could only seat 16 defectors, but there were more members who wanted to go. As word spread the following morning about defections, Jones's facade crumbled. A low murmur spread through the settlement as word got out. People were leaving. Some watched in silence, too afraid to act. Others wept, realizing too late that they would never get another chance. Jones's voice crackled over the loudspeakers, his tone shifting from strained reassurance to barely contained rage. "Traitors," he spat. "They are turning on us. They will come for us all. We must stand together." Jones then called for his most loyal guards. They were given their orders. A quiet panic spread, but no one spoke out. No one ever did. At the airstrip in Georgetown, tension hung thick in the air. The defectors boarded the small planes, their faces a mix of fear and relief. Some clutched their children, their hands shaking as they climbed the steps. Then came the sound, sharp, unmistakable. Gunfire. A truck had pulled up to the airstrip. Armed men spilled out, their faces cold with purpose. They raised their weapons and fired. Screams filled the air. People ran in every direction, some diving for cover, others frozen in place, trapped by the horror of what was happening. Congressman Ryan was hit. A reporter collapsed beside him. More gunshots. A woman shielding her child fell to the ground. One of the pilots tried to start the engine, desperate to take off, but the bullets kept coming. The shooting felt endless. When the silence finally came, the ground was littered with bodies. The survivors, few as they were left in stunned disbelief. The nightmare was no longer just inside Jonestown. It had spilled out into the world. 5 people were dead, including Congressman Ryan, who had traveled to Guyana to uncover the truth. Several members of the press and a temple defector were also among the dead. Back in Jonestown, Jones was enraged. He had already ordered the murder of the people at the airstrip. Now he was roaring to his followers, "This is not suicide. This is a revolutionary act. They will not take our lives. We will take them ourselves." The pavilion, usually a place for speeches and gatherings, had become an execution ground. Parents clutched their children, some trying to soothe them, others too numb to move. The vats of poison sat ready, a grim final offering from Jones. Some went willingly, convinced that Jones spoke the truth. They lined up, taking the cups filled with a cyanide-laced fruit-flavored drink, an act so infamous that today, drinking the Kool-Aid has become a phrase synonymous with blind devotion and self-destruction, obediently swallowing what they were told was a path to freedom. Others resisted, but there was no escape. Armed guards circled the crowd, their expressions unreadable. Families were injected by force. Mothers screamed as their babies convulsed in their arms. The wails of the dying filled the humid jungle air, mixing with the distant rustling of the trees. It was chaos and madness. Jim Jones refused to drink his own batch of poison. Incapable of killing himself, his nurse, Annie Moore, fatally shot him in the head before she killed herself in the same manner. The full scope of the Jonestown tragedy unfolded over the next 3 days. By the time it was over, 909 people had perished. The largest mass loss of American civilian life until 9/11. For Eugene, it was life-changing. His mother, his wife, his newborn son, Martin, all gone. Eugene sat in stunned silence when he heard the news that Ollie had fought. She had pleaded. She had refused to poison their child. But it didn't matter. They held her down. They injected Martin first, then they came for her. He tried to picture her final moments, the terror in her eyes, the desperate grip she must have had on their son, refusing to let go. But in the end, there was no mercy, no escape. His fists clenched, his entire body shaking. He had left to protect them, to secure a future for them. And now they were gone. Eugene never got to bury them. It was not possible to go to Jonestown to identify them, and many cemeteries in the United States would not accept the bodies from Jonestown. Eventually, Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland accepted hundreds of bodies in a mass grave. Over time, Eugene found a path to healing. He shared his story in interviews and public appearances, ensuring the world would not forget the lessons of Jonestown. "I died that day," Eugene said, "but I woke up the next morning and was reborn, not the same, but alive." The site of Jonestown in Guyana remains a haunting reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and blind devotion. Today it stands not as a temple, but as a cautionary tale etched in history, a place that whispers of the lives lost and the lessons we must never forget.
New Heath Story episodes drop twice a week only on the Jim Heath channel. If you'd like to help keep Heath Story going, consider becoming a member. Click below to join.